The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to the Brandon Peters Show as we cap off 1 year of this show. So, of course, for a discussion of the 2006 film 16 Blocks, I bring back the man who helped launch the program from Forbes, Mr. Scott Mendelson.
Thank you. I can hear the applause from here. Okay.
Zack Snyder rules.
Sometimes. I liked Sucker Punch before it was cool.
Nobody's got a flawless filmography.
You know, if it had a halfway decent extras, I'd probably have bought the Snyder cut on Blu-ray this afternoon.
There you go. I got it for free.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, Hitchcock even made some bad ones, folks. Like, you did.
I'm not a fan of the Birds. I've never gotten into it. No.
I'm not going to diss his classics. I was talking, what is it? Topaz. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a fan of Topaz.
That's not one of his better ones.
There is one really beautiful shot where a woman gets stabbed or shot and she falls and her dress falls like a blood pool, which is really cool. But it's like a 2.5-hour movie and not engaging.
Foul Play, his last movie isn't all that great, if I recall.
Family plot. Foul Play is a trauma.
I'm sorry.
Comedy.
Yeah.
Family Plot. Yeah, Family Plot's better than its rep, but it's...
Yeah. Marnie doesn't do much for him, but it's nice seeing Sean Connery stretch at an early age.
Oh, I enjoy Marnie's one of those I didn't like younger. I was like, but as an adult, I'm more into it. I'm big on, actually one that's lesser talked about, Torn Curtain with Paul Newman. I like it a lot.
It was fun.
It's his formula. Again, it's not one of the strongest ones of that formula, but it works for me.
I'll tell you one that really worked for me just when I was a kid and first getting into Hitchcock when I was 11 was, I watched Psycho. I like Psycho. I like Vertigo in Your Window. But I thought Dial M for Murder was a blast.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the remake, too. Perfect Murder. I think they're both very fun, well-made versions of a similar story.
Yeah, I saw Dial M on 35mm one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think you and I talked about Perfect Murder where we, like, Viggo Mortensen once got a bad rap from us. Where we're like, he's just some pretty guy they put in movies.
I had no idea who he was.
This guy's really good.
They're like, how did he get billing? Okay, whatever.
Yeah. How did he get
I didn't remember Man on the Moon with Reese Witherspoon.
Right.
Where he does, he dies by tractor, if I recall.
Ooh. And then he was in G.I. Jane with the stash.
Yes.
I didn't watch many Viggo Mortensen. I had seen him in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Like that was.
Wasn't he in The Prophecy with Chris Walken?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Which I saw that years after the fact.
That guy put in the work before he got leads. Like really did.
And he was willing to hop on a plane quickly when Stuart Townsend was that the one that got tossed?
Mm-hmm.
The Douglas Scott of Lord of the Rings franchise.
Right. Oh gosh.
Two of them could have an interesting conversation.
Thanks for the career, man. How's those Anne Rice movies going? No? But yeah, a year ago this started. I mean, we recorded it more than a year ago because I started really early, but this dropped this show and it was off running. And I think it's been kind of, maybe I've found footing, but the format and stuff really was helped laid out with you to start and run through it. And I think it's been going the same, similar.
I did very little work. This is all you, man.
I know it was all, but you were like you were the first subject to have to experience
of course.
This nonsense for the show.
We'll always be your Bill Murray.
Like I said, I would say I was like, I'm your Jean-Paul Valley for Mendelson Memos. Which I had to explain to somebody. Oh, in my Crow episode, I explained that to Danielle Sepulveda. I was like, this is like the Crow was like during this time with like all these like dark, edgy guys, or like the superhero that kill. And like for Batman, they just said, well, Bruce Wayne's gone. We got this crazy asshole who's gonna show you why you don't want Batman to be like that. And
she didn't know that particular arc?
No, she didn't know that. She wasn't
How
really
old
big
is
comic
she?
books. She's my age.
Oh, okay.
But she's not. She wasn't a comic book.
No, that's whatever. I get it.
So.
I just assumed the plot was from the, she's like 22. It's like, oh.
I've had those where I've actually
I'm sure.
go back with music videos where I'm like, you don't know this? I'm like,
well, I listened to your Meet the Robinsons episode. I watched it as a teenager while babysitting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which that was one taken from Scott, right? That was like, that's a Mendelson
I had to
classic.
spread the wealth.
I told Sabina, I'm like, you're gonna be hearing from Scott Mendelson about this one. She picked that. I was like, oh.
No, I did listen to it. It was perfectly fine.
And I got to watch that movie again, which is always a win.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I watched it twice. For that, but so good. But a lot of people when they do a year or something, they're like, "Oh, it flew right by." It felt like a year.
Oh yeah. Well,
especially during these times.
We're living in the end times.
We're living in the end times. I put out like a lot. I went from a bi-weekly podcast on my old show to like daily stuff from this almost. So it's a lot of work, and I'm glad to have had. I mean, you've been a regular on this show inadvertently because the Out Now commentaries run in this stream as well.
Yes.
So you've been on here, but you've also made 3 appearances as well. Which in the old show, I think you only made 1 early on appearance, and then
Superman 3 and 4, right?
Superman 3 and 4. But yeah, and you have been last time the box office was slowly coming back. Now the box office is kind of back, kind of.
Well, let me put it this way: in a year and change, we've gone from God, I wish people would see more than just Marvel movies to thank God people are seeing Marvel movies.
Right? Yeah, Shang-Chi, the savior of not summer because we're at Labor Day.
Well, I think this year counts as summer.
Summer, and finally,
it's in the Out Now box. I've got it number 2 on my box office pool. Come on, hurry up and get past Black Widow, you little.
Yeah,
got like 2 weeks.
I didn't put that one as high because I'm like, well, it's at the end, so I don't know how much it's going to accumulate before this is over. Huh?
I mean, if I had thought about that ahead of time, I might have agreed with you.
Yeah, we're referring to the
vacuum.
Out Now with Aaron and Abe box office gamble that we've taken every summer, and this year has been exciting and frustrating.
Did anyone not put F9 at number 1? I'm pretty sure everybody.
I think everyone's top 5 was relatively the same. Give or take a title. I had Jungle Cruise in my top 5. I think.
Yeah, it's.
Luckily, I had the horror movies in the 10, but at the bottom of the 10. So
obviously, we all believe too much in the Heights. That's a tragedy.
I didn't. I had
fair enough. Good for you.
I dark horsed it.
You're not making the mistake of Warner Brothers of overestimating the taste of the American moviegoer.
All right, which is a great movie.
Oh yeah,
I recently did the 4K. Holy crap, that movie's outstanding. People should see it. Maybe it'll become a cult hit. I don't know what constitute those nowadays.
Yeah, what the hell does that mean now?
What you get nowadays is a bunch of people going, why didn't people go see us in theater? It's great. I'm like, did you? Well, no. But why didn't people, like the Arrested Development crowd, that crowd, that's the one I'm talking about. Why didn't people watch this? It was great. I'm like, you just figured it. You just started it 5 years later. Like, what are you?
Like, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is great, and nobody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Won an Oscar over a Pixar movie? They're pretty happy with that.
It made money.
Yeah. It's a cartoon. They're lucky it didn't pull a Mask of the Phantasm.
Right, yeah. Cult movie right there.
Yeah.
There we go. That would constitute that still as a cult. I don't think people still have seen that movie enough or know that it exists even. It's been some time. But yeah, I've been trying to go, like, even the ones that are free for me at home, HBO Max or Disney Plus, I've been going to the theater to see them when I can. But I do like the option of like the recent Conjuring film. I had a lot going on that weekend. I was going out of town to see my mother. I had some other things, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to get to the theater, but I really want to see it right now. It was there on HBO Max.
Yeah.
That movie did fine without me, I guess, at the box office, but that was a nice option to have for a weekend I couldn't get out.
Regardless of my thoughts on studios doing that or not doing that in terms of day and date and premiere access or whatever, if the option's there, I cannot begrudge consumer for taking it.
Especially
that's not
like Malignant when they're not showing it till what day of for critics.
Thursday at 7.
Thursday at 7.
Which and it's HBO Max. I'm probably going just because it's probably the only screening I'm doing that week, and I kind of want to see it because whatever. Anyway, But I think it's telling that all we're talking about this week from Warner Brothers is the Matrix trailer, and looked at all these new photos from Aquaman 2.
Right.
And, that's probably how it would be even if it was a masterpiece.
Like Sucker Punch when Amy Adams cast as Lois Lane.
Sunday morning of that was a great distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's James Wan, so how bad can it be? But
that's my thing is my James Wan ranking is really weird. It's Saw may be my least favorite of his movies just by default.
I've always been, with Saw with me, I've been always just impressed with what him and Lee Whannell did with what little they had.
Oh, absolutely.
Little they had somehow had a pretty solid cast, but I don't know. It's impressive and both bad things in there. There's performances that are just those were the takes and the worst car chase ever put on film.
Which is hysterical when you consider that he went on to make the rather excellent Furious 7.
Yeah.
Which has 2 or 3 fantastic automobile chases.
Yeah.
Although I would love to see a scene of Vin Diesel and Paul Walker or whatever doing the
oh, you like a sick
that's all the standard gun of F9.
You like a sick asshole. What? No. Yeah. Yeah. We've had our fun conversations with the original Saw, but it's not my favorite Saw, so
no. But I actually like Insidious more than Insidious 2 more than Insidious 1. I think they're both solid. I like Insidious 2 partially because it actually has an ending, unlike the first one, which had, I was totally in its touches until they had a cliffhanger. It's not over yet.
Well, I didn't think
the movie's over.
I think they like John Carpenter and they wanted to go for that boof ending, which now those people used to leave the theater going, "Ooh, one last scare," or "Oh, it's still out there. I can't go in the parking lot. I'm scared." Now it's looks like they're making another one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It could be Halloween. People left the theater after Halloween in 1978. Fine. Today they'd be like, "Oh, when's the next one coming?" They left it open for a sequel. It's no, it's supposed to mean when you go home tonight, Michael Myers could come to your house and kill you. That's all it is. The pirate ghosts still are going to come on the holiday that they haunt that island. It's a stinger. It's not. Well,
it's I remember even in the summer of '93, I had to explain to my fellow middle schoolers that no, just because there was a goofy cliffhanger does not mean we're getting another Super Mario Brothers movie.
And thus,
there was not another Super Mario Brothers movie.
Super Mario. Mortal Kombat got one.
Yeah.
But did we need that one? I think we need the laughs, but
I didn't actually watch Annihilation until right before the new one came out. I had never seen it before, and it lived up to the hype. Let me tell you.
It's I watched him before the new one came out, and I was like, "Hey, I was entertained." I'll tell you what, I don't know for the right reasons, but that movie entertained me. And then, did you watch the animated one?
Yeah, I've seen them both.
Holy crap, that was violent.
Oh yeah, of course, it's cartoons. You can do whatever the heck they want.
Scorpion's Revenge one, I was like, whoa. Someone needed to recommend this to me sooner. There's a Liu Kang one coming. I'm waiting up.
Yeah, the Liu Kang one is, it's more of the same. It's not as good just because there's not as much of a narrative structure this time around.
Yeah.
But you get what you pay for in terms of carnage.
Right. I got offered that for review, but I was too stacked up at the time. I was like, I just want to watch this. I don't want to write about it.
No, they sent it to me just on a whim. I was going to write it. I might still do it. But one Mortal Kombat movie this year got a sequel. Ha ha ha.
That's funny.
Although, to be fair, and this is total speculation, I would not be surprised if Mortal Kombat, the live action one, got some kind of sequel, just as sort of a proof of concept that the whole HBO Max thing didn't kill off all their franchises.
Gotcha.
Because it's cheap enough, and people did watch it HBO Max. By those standards, it did very well.
Right. And I think with Mortal Kombat's IP, it's always going to have that option because the games are always really popular.
Yes.
So at some point, someone's going to try to hit a generation, maybe this will be their Mortal Kombat movie. Every time there's either going to be, because in the meantime, they weren't films, but they had that Mortal Kombat Legacy, that mini-series thing that was film-like with Michael Jai White. So there was that in between. There's been cartoons. There was a live-action series, a cartoon series, and then now these cartoon movies. So I think, we haven't seen the last of live-action Mortal Kombat stuff for sure, just because of its sheer consistency with outputting video games and that people like the video games.
Yeah, that would not surprise me.
Those are iconic characters. People know them.
Yeah, Liu Kang's Destiny or whatever it's called. It's fine. It is what it is. And yeah, obviously, unless I walk out of my, Malignant, I was going to say Maleficent, that's a little different. Malignant thing, it's the new classic of horror. Then I'll patch most people will just say, I watch this on HBO Max. Those that choose to, because obviously what we're seeing is the numbers, the lost box office revenue is not being made up, as far as I can tell anyway, with HBO Max. I mean, after In the Heights came out, everyone was like, oh, everybody must have watched it on HBO Max. It got less viewers in opening weekend than Those Who Wish Me Dead.
Yeah.
That's a tragedy, but it is what it is. And one of the frustrating things about this, the new normal in terms of streaming is that the numbers are either hidden or they're like differing, conflicting third-party analysis that I do find of some use because they've been doing them long enough that I can compare them to themselves. Mm-hmm. Like when Samba TV puts out, this movie was watched this number. Well, I know because Samba said this one reported this. So I can compare between Samba and Samba. But the numbers are so hard to discern that it sort of validates any and all narratives, which is very frustrating, especially in this very entrenched fan, corporate idea, fanboy, whatever time. Mm-hmm. But whatever, it is what it is. I think the studios are either realizing or are additionally understanding that, as long as they want to make movies that cost $100-200 million, they need theaters to make their money back.
Right. Yeah. Because the streaming, I paid X amount per month, but that gets dispersed between everything they're going to. It's not like I bought a movie ticket for this and that's what this is. I paid $15, but that's going to Mortal Kombat. That's going to Those Who Wish Me Dead. That's going to whatever I watch.
Definitely Tom and Jerry.
Definitely Tom and Jerry. But yeah, no, it's
a movie that saved cinema.
It's like the best story about stream or something that just had a boom for a service is Hamilton. Is that the best thing that's drawn people?
I think so. I think that was the right movie at the right time, and kudos for Disney for not holding onto it for another year and a half. And that was also something that I would argue that I don't think anyone's going to feel that they lose much not seeing that in theaters, because that's not something that you would expect to see in theaters anyway.
It's almost like the Fathom events, like come see the
exactly. Fathom events, or BBC presents this live recording of Phantom of the Opera, or something. Right? Yeah. Now, having said that, the recreation of Hamilton was excellent. Mm-hmm. I would love to see more versions of that with other stage play. Especially I don't necessarily have the time and endless money to fly my kids to New York and see something on Broadway every other week.
Right, and I'll tell you what, that Hamilton, my kids have had that on like loop since it dropped. They are obsessed with Hamilton. Like it's crazy. She watched In the Heights like crazy while it was on HBO Max and got really pissed when it was taken away because my daughter, she was all about it. But now we have it on 4K Ultra HD and she can watch it.
There you go.
And digital, because it comes with digital copy and she can watch it all the time. So.
Who's lived too hard.
Nah, man, it ain't millet time.
A witness who's seen too much.
Congratulations, you're about to testify against one of New York's worst.
You're gonna ruin the lives of 6 cops.
They have 2 hours to go 16 blocks.
There's about a ton of cops between me and you, and they all want this kid dead.
You are not gonna make it.
Bruce Willis, Mos Def, David Morse.
Please stop.
16 Blocks, a film by Richard Donner, rated PG-13.
16 Blocks. It's directed by Richard Donner, written by Richard Wank, starring Bruce Willis, Yassine Bey under his alias Mos Def, David Zayas, Jenna Stern, and David Morse. It's about an aging alcoholic cop who is assigned to the task of escorting a witness from police custody to a courthouse 16 blocks away. There are, however, chaotic forces at work that prevent them from making it in one piece. Scott, you and I are big fans of this movie.
Yes.
And I think you and I reference it more than probably anybody else I can think
Quite
of.
Possibly. It came out in early 2006. I don't know the exact weekend, but I know it was early enough to have a Super Bowl commercial.
It was March, April. I saw it at the Chinese on like the Tuesday after it came out. I remember because I had a friend come visit me for spring break that year, and I took him to a movie, The Chinese, and it was 16 blocks, and it was like a Tuesday night.
That's nice.
Probably 10 people in that theater total, but because of that, I was like, man, the sound mix and sound design is phenomenal on 16 blocks. Like, it was really good. But and I really enjoyed the movie, which I was just like, well, that's the thing playing there this week. And I was like, and I came out going, I think that was really, really good. So,
yeah, I mean, I saw it, I think also when Monday or Tuesday or whatever, after opening weekend, I think at the Burbank. And yeah, it struck me as, and this was before, this was when there was only 3 Die Hard movies in existence.
Yeah.
It's sort of a best case scenario final Die Hard story.
Yeah.
In that, in the real world, this is what a police officer like John McClane would become, where he has no friends, he's estranged from most of his family, he's a raging alcoholic, and his fellow officers, tolerate him and humor him, but they're just
that have taken advantage of them because you can tell they're slightly younger. But like I said, like I know people will be like, "Well, John McClane wouldn't be like this." I'm like, where we saw him in Die Hard with a Vengeance, this is very much where he could become. Maybe not the John McClane at the end of the first one. It's happy, whatever. Yeah. But John McClane from the follow-up that was done by one of the creators of the original Die Hard, McTiernan, this feels like the extension of that. And we would get Die Hard with Live Free or Die Hard the very next year, which is funny because I think you and I in 2006 were like, this would be a great final Die Hard. We don't need another Die Hard. We have 16 blocks.
But to be fair, Live Free or Die Hard is pretty decent.
Yeah.
And it deals with a lot of the same, thematics as this. The whole, this guy who at one moment in his life was this larger than life superhero, basically, and the rest of his life just sort of happened.
Yeah.
I mean, Live Free doesn't ignore, it doesn't negate the 2 previous ones, but it certainly doesn't talk about them in any real way.
No, it's John McClane, the mythical figure he'd become in the time between the sequels. So that's how I always looked at it. I know people are like, he's not like this. I'm like, no, you're seeing him through the lens of what we've created in fandom of him, like this idolized McClane that's not even happy with himself and stuff like that. But through the lens of who he was, we see these heroic deeds in a heightened fashion.
Yes. But getting back to 16 blocks, regardless of its Die Hard connections or not, it is an original picture and, it's not a franchise film. And yeah, it's a very, I don't want to say slow burn because it's actually very fast paced, but it's not particularly violent. Mm-hmm. It is a police thriller in which all of the characters try really hard not to kill other people. Right. Because in the real world, there are consequences for that.
Even the bad guy, even David Morse.
Yeah, even the bad guys try,
David Morse does not want to kill people.
Yeah. It's not like they run around popping bystanders. I'm sorry?
Yeah, well, except Mos Def, but he won't do it himself.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's there's a certain tension because they're, both parties are trying to avoid quote unquote unnecessary violence. The film is very mournful and I don't want to say somber because it's not, it's certainly, again, it's a Richard Donner film. Richard Donner, come what may, is a relatively optimistic, idealistic person. Mm-hmm. And the film eventually becomes a somewhat idealistic and optimistic picture, even though it is very, in a non-yellow hallider kind of way, upfront about, institutional police corruption, institutional racism, and how that factors into police corruption.
Right.
We find out toward the end that Bruce Willis, who's been spending this entire film protecting a witness from murder, which is very uncharacteristic for his character at that point. And, it's sort of, it's funny that, the other bad guys who were all his friends and colleagues are like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
So I think David Morse even says at some point, I guess he woke up.
Right. Yeah.
And the scene, that he kicks off the movie, which there is, one of the cops just pulls his, not a cop, it's one of the other guys, someone they hired, is about to kill him. And then out of nowhere, Bruce Willis just on instinct drops his liquor and shoots the guy. And the look on his face is like, I can't believe I just did that. Why did I just do that? What does this mean now? It's such an atypical reaction from a movie action hero. Mm-hmm. And that resonates throughout the entire picture. Again, they're trying to avoid conflict at all costs. But you could probably count the gunshots in this film. if you were so inclined. But the film, through Mos Def's character, he's a small-time criminal that one way or another got mixed up in, shady business. But his lifelong dream is to open a bakery, and he's got the money. He just needs to, survive long enough to get out of town to open up that bakery.
Yeah, he's going to testify and go. Yeah. Then he's got a locker with the money in it that he has to go grab, and then he's going to Seattle.
Yeah. And he's testifying against corrupt cops, one of whom turns out to be Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
So it's not really treated as a plot twist. It's sort of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I mean, this entire film has been about these friends and former partners of Willis's character, Jack something or another, who are, corrupt in a very realistic, non-melodramatic way. Of course, he'd also be involved.
Right.
The film comes to a conclusion, frankly, in a very surprising way. First of all, the witness in question does not testify.
Right.
He sort of, allows him to get away and go off and live his life. And he takes that person's place on the witness stand, implicating himself.
Right.
As we find out in the epilogue, he goes to jail for it for a couple of years.
He originally, in the original ending, he died for it.
Yes. And again, that's, Richard Donner does generally not like doing unhappy endings.
Yeah.
That does not surprise me. As we all know, the original ending of Lethal Weapon 2 had him being shot, Riggs being shot and killed by the main bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
That was changed for better or worse. And I think it's fine.
Right.
I'm not one that thinks that a character has to die in order for the movie to have dramatic weight.
Exactly. Yeah. It's old hat. There was a time where that was doing something, but now it's just like, I'm more surprised when they do survive.
Yeah. Or even like conspiracy theory, where you set up an ending where, Mel Gibson probably should die.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I had to, pick one where, they probably should have killed him off the end, that'd probably be the one, but it's not a deal breaker. The movie's over at that point.
Right.
But no, he does not die. And the epilogue is actually very sweet.
Yeah.
He's sitting with his estranged sister, who is no longer estranged. It's clear that he's gotten himself together. He's not drinking.
Yeah, he looks clean, like his eyes.
Yeah, he looked clean. He looked clean and sober.
Real clean and sober, yeah.
And, the epilogue is he gets a note from Eddie. And, he sends him a cake from his new cake shop.
Mm-hmm.
And leaves, with a very sweet note. And basically, the idea is that people can change.
Mm-hmm.
As Rocky once said, after he defeated Ivan Drago and ended the Cold War in Soviet Union, Soviet Russia. It's a very optimistic picture in terms of just, action thriller thematics. And yes, by today's standards, it probably would get a lot of think pieces about, it's so honest about police corruption and it's so honest about systemic racism and how the criminal justice system doesn't go after bad guys and punishes the little guy. And again, back in a less heightened time, that was just considered good movie making.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being not shocked, but amused when I rewatched the two Candyman sequels last year, back when we all thought Candyman was coming out in late 2020. And we can debate whether they're good, but they're both very political and very honest about structural institutional racism.
Their mind's in the right spot. Their money just isn't.
Yeah, in a way that would be considered politically courageous by today's standards. In a time when something like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier gets held up as incredibly brave because Sam gets denied a bank loan. Again, I'm certainly more fond of films that were more honest back before they had to appeal to every theoretical moviegoer, where they didn't have to shroud their politics in fantasy and metaphor.
It's interesting, like just how casual it feels about it. Like it's not. It's like it's presenting it as something rather than, hey, let's stop for a moment. And Bruce Willis doesn't even have to sit and preach or say that. Like he does all this thing as himself, as his as his character, not because the script needs to pull around and do it. And it's the right move. Like, granted, he's taking the heroic move from Mos Def. The white guy's going to do it instead, but that's in order for him to have any sort of reconciliation for it. It's got to be him. That's his bravery, no matter what. And Mos Def gets to have his ending and get away from all this problem. Like, even if he testifies, how is he going to testify and then just, you can go to Seattle now?
Yeah. Well, to a certain extent,
he's a cop. He knows it's not going to be Seattle after today.
Yes. Even, Jack says to a certain extent, I have to wait to do this because this isn't your burden. You are a victim of this system. It's not your responsibility to be the martyr, to be the hero, that's got to be on me because I have.
Yeah.
It
makes a difference if I do it. If you do it, there's a chance we lose this.
Yeah. And it's a movie where almost arguably every character is smart. They make smart decisions. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that gets them away from danger. And sometimes the bad guys bring them closer to danger because the bad guys are smart too.
Yeah. Well, it's perfectly staged by Donner and his editor in the first scene where David Morse is introduced. When he comes in, you have Mos Def looking at each person as they walk in, and then the wrong one walks in, and Bruce Willis notices Mos Def, notices something up, but also David Morse notices that he notices that, and hit it right there. And just, there's a lot of that in this movie, but that's like probably the best example, and it sets the stage for how the movie's going to play. Like someone's 2 steps ahead of somebody who's actually a step ahead of that, and it's clever. It feels now. It's not like, haha, look how smart we are. It's just we don't have to sit through a lot of bullshit movie things.
And I like that Willis's character calls for help at every opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is a nice touch. It's not like, oh, I can't call for back. Yeah, of course you can. And you do. And to a certain extent, eventually that's what saves the day is, the ADA that isn't an idiot. And she believes you and believes him and believes what he's trying to say. And, basically says, okay, come on in and I'll help you. And he does.
His sister is a bit of a deus ex machina for it.
Yeah.
But they set up the sister early on, ambulance driver, okay. But, sometimes the movie's got to get from point A to point B.
It also makes sense that people, that the 2 members of that family would be in somewhat the same general occupation. And I like the payoff where Mos Def thinks or Eddie thinks that he's ex-wife.
And they make the movie, we're through Mos Def's eyes through that, and we think the same thing too, and it's quite hilarious.
He's a very nice, sympathetic character, and you want him to survive. You want him to win.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, obviously you want, you don't want Bruce Willis's character to die either. But the movie presents the point where it's okay if he goes out, if Eddie gets away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, the film more, not quite climaxes, but the big action climax, if you want to call it that, is, a bus standoff in which he is reluctantly and sort of inadvertently forced to hijack a bus.
Right.
And honestly, that's probably the one place for me where the movie kind of slows down a little bit. Just because it seems like spectacle for the sake of spectacle in a film that otherwise has avoided it. Not a deal breaker. There's still good character beats there. And there's a nice bit where Eddie shows a young girl who's one of the hostages, how to make a cake. And he shows her his cake recipe book, and it's a character moment.
And he tells her it's his birthday, and it's not. And he tells Bruce Willis that, I needed to make her feel comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, I think the bus thing is mainly there for us to have a moment of like, how the hell does he get out of this? Like, what happens here? Like, and it's really tough to figure out. And then he's smart. He has Mos Def switch clothes with the guy and starts letting people out unexpectedly to throw off the cops because he knows they're going to come through. As
a payoff, that scene has to, there has to be a moment where Eddie steps in front of the, metaphorically steps in front of the rifle for Jack.
Right.
And that's how that scene climaxes. And one thing I love is after that, the film's actual climax is a conversation between 2 old cops in a garage.
Mm-hmm.
Or wherever they happen, like in the basement or whatever.
Yeah, the parking garage below.
And it's an emotionally charged conversation. It has years of friendship and bitterness and guilt. Again, it doesn't end in a shootout, doesn't end in an explosion. There's one gunshot at the very end of the movie.
Right.
And it's you have Bruce Willis, and this, all due respect, back when he was fully engaged in the material.
Yeah.
When he was, when he was at his best, I always felt he was the modern day Bogart.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I think Harrison Ford has a lot of Bogart in him as a talent, but Willis too. And when he was on, still, but like one of the biggest and best movie stars on the planet you could have. You get great performances, you get people in seats, you get big movies happening. When he cared, now he don't care that he is a red box staple or but he's done his time. I mean,
well, and also, I without giving him too much credit, I don't know what kind of movies he would make for quote unquote A-level Hollywood these days anyway.
Right.
I mean, even G.I. Joe was sort of like, yes, he's there as an added value element, but he's sort of just there along for the ride, if that makes sense.
Well, it's kind of funny that, like, during a time when Stallone and Schwarzenegger were straight-to-video guys, or just not, Schwarzenegger was more being a governor, that they've kind of flip-flopped where Stallone can get in a theater probably before Willis now.
Yeah, but
right project comes along.
Mostly for a Rocky Rambo movie, and that's that's always been Stallone's thing. And I love Nighthawks. I like Oscar. There's plenty of movies I'm quite fond of, but commercially, with the exception of that like 93 to 97 space, all of Stallone's hits are Rocky movies, Rambo movies, and Expendables movies.
Right. Well, I mean,
almost everything.
James Gunn has used him a couple times. Like he's got people that'll put him places, but yeah.
Oh yeah, it's sort of an added value element, something like Spy Kids 3D. But in terms of a starring vehicle, he's always been dependent on Rocky and Rambo, for better or worse. Cobra was probably Tango and Cash, maybe that one's expensive though. I don't know how they spent $55 million in that movie, but whatever.
Worth it.
But yeah, what struck me then and now is how small scale and scaled to life and plausible and intellectually and emotionally honest 16 Blocks is.
Right.
And it feels like a Richard Donner movie.
It is. And it's his final one, which is...
Yeah, it was his last one he directed.
He went on a big high in my book, but it's crazy that this was like 15 years ago. Much like, I mean, John Carpenter, he hasn't done anything since
The Ward,
which was that 2011?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Carpenter said, I don't have anything to say. I'm not going to just do a movie to do a movie. I got to have something to say. And if you don't...
Yeah.
And it's not like he's been away from movies. He's been producing and helping his wife's company and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, and even Donner, he didn't direct between 2006 and when he died just a couple months ago. But he was, he and his wife have been producing Up a Storm before and after that. They produced Free Willy. They produced the X-Men films. They produced.
Wasn't he pretty integral in those reshoots for Wolverine, X-Men Origins?
Possibly.
They sent him. I believe they sent him to the set. Or
that's quite possible. I know
for that. I remember that, but
because I know they were heavy on producing, and they produced The Lost Boys, which I would argue is sort of the other side of the '80s nostalgia coin with Goonies, which he of course directed. No, and I mentioned this right after he died, that in a somewhat under the radar, less flashy, less celebrated way, Richard Donner is responsible for pop culture childhood as Spielberg and Zemeckis.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, made one of the definitive prestige adult horror films of the 70s. Mm-hmm. He basically invented the modern comic book superhero movie. The Goonies is basically the definitive 80s kids adventure nostalgia flick. Monster Squad's better, but whatever.
It is. Yes, it is.
He and McTiernan and Verhoeven, basically revitalized the American action movie with him. It was obviously Lethal Weapon. Mm-hmm. Lethal Weapon 2 was like the first modern breakout sequel, where the sequel does far more than its predecessor without any kind of, this is a big event for people that don't care, things like Terminator 2 and Rambo 2.
Right, yeah.
Lethal Weapon 2 was just another Lethal Weapon movie.
Right.
And even, I don't want to give Scrooge too much cultural credit, but that was the introduction for A Christmas Carol to a lot of Reagan-era kids. Mm-hmm. And then, between 1976 and I guess 1989 with Lethal Weapon 2, he was just kicking ass and taking names.
I mean, he was a household name director at the time. There was Richard Donner. I mean,
if you followed the industry, you knew who he was. Yeah,
I knew. Yeah, like he was one of the first directors that I knew, and it wasn't just. I think it was more Lethal Weapon than it was Superman at the time. That I just knew that it was Richard Donner. He did this, and he did Goonies, and then he did Superman. Okay, and then
he did The Omen. Awesome. I love The Omen.
What? But yeah, no, he's great. And then, he was starting to get spaced out with, this was 3 years after Timeline. And before that was Lethal Weapon 4, which was 8 years before 16 Blocks. So
yes,
in that period.
No, he did a lot of Mel Gibson movies in the 90s. Maverick, Lethal Weapon 3, Lethal Weapon 4, Conspiracy Theory. I love Maverick. I think it's terrific. Mm-hmm. It's probably the hardest one to watch if you still, for better or worse, have issues with Mel Gibson, because that movie is entirely about his movie star charisma.
Right.
But it's still, if you can hold your nose, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, like Bruce, Mel you can see why he was a humongous star back then. It sucks that he turned to a shit person, but
but even in his, most of his post-scandal movies, Mel Gibson is an interesting and engrossing and thoughtful screen presence.
And nobody will admit it now, but y'all thought the same about Kevin Spacey at once too.
Well, he has yet to make any movies since then, so that's
true. Well, Franco Nero put him in something. So
who? Oh yeah, the Italian thing.
Yeah.
But getting back to 16 Blocks.
But you know who is great in 16 Blocks is David Morse. Like he
as always,
is phenomenal. And I would think had this movie been like a big hit and a weak Oscar year, I don't know that he'd get nominated, but people might think he could sneak in because he's just that good in this movie.
And he's played a lot of cops.
Yeah.
He's also played a cop turned cab driver in a CBS show called Hack that aired for a couple of years. I don't know why I randomly brought that up.
Yeah. But I think this is the first movie I ever saw where he was billed in the trailer and he was billed on the poster.
Yeah.
And I was like, David, whoa, they're giving David Morse some billing here.
And I know by the time Disturbia came around, it was sort of like, look who we got for this movie. We're a big deal movie. And, I like Disturbia quite a bit. And, he's one reason why. That's a classic example of rip off, don't remake. You
know what they should make? They should make a movie just called Code and starring him and put just his last name above it. So it's like Morse Code. That's my dad joke of the episode.
Oh boy, I have to go now.
Canceled. This
pretty
show
much
is over.
It's been a good year.
If a listener wants to make a fake poster of Morse Code, whatever genre you want to do, please tweet me, send it my way. I would love to see Morse.
I'm sure Brandon will pay you a lot of money for your work.
The title's not Morse Code. It's David Morse in Code. Just the movie Code. Make it happen.
He has gold bullion under his bed.
There you go. No, this movie, this time around when I watched it, I was really taken with the editing. There's a lot of smart reversals and things. Like I like when Mos Def is in the back of the car at the beginning when he's going to the liquor store and a hitman that the cops have set up comes to shoot him at the door, and then there's the window kind of just chatter and is red, and Bruce Willis has shot him in the back of the head. It's really cool. There's some interesting plays with like cuts around corners, things like that. There's the one with the sheets down in the boiler room of some apartment building and people waiting on the other side of the door that we're going to see. Just the cuts, just really smooth, kinetic, a lot of playfulness, and just really gives you a feel for this. Like you feel the danger, you feel just the sense of the area they're in and the task they have at hand really well. They just stood out this time a lot.
And it, without calling attention to itself, it uses a lot of misdirection in terms of who is where in relation to, their relative antagonists and who isn't there. It's a very cleanly edited movie. You could always tell what's going on and where it's going on. And to be fair, its action is entirely plausible, so you're not choreographing super duper kung fu fights or anything like that.
No. Craziest thing he does is he drives a bus that's has its tires flattened and parks it in an alley. It gets stuck in an alley, and he's right by a doorway when he opens the store. But that's
again, keeping with the film's realistic tone and realistic template, the amount of times in which characters get shot in non-lethal ways.
Yeah.
And they are in pain for the remainder of their performance.
Right.
Willis gets shot in the hand. One of the cops gets shot in the leg.
Def gets shot in the side or something too.
But he doesn't get, it's not the Jesus shot. He doesn't have a big death speech.
No.
He does survive. But even then, in a time where you did get, cop thrillers and street level action movies and star-driven vehicles, this stood out as a very thoughtful, nuanced, emotionally compelling, character-driven example of just a really good studio release. So, of course, nobody saw it, even then.
Right.
It was not a hit.
If people saw it today, like the people seeing it today, would they be mad that, of course, a cop ends up being the hero in the end? Would they be mad about that it glorifies a cop? But this is maybe something they should see, to be like, hey, be the fucking hero, no matter how down and out you are. Maybe this is a cop movie cops should see.
I suppose. And again, it's in a way that films were once allowed to be. It takes it's hot button issues, police corruption, systemic racism, et cetera, and just they're accepted fact. The movie doesn't have to talk about them because it understands the viewers are entirely aware that this is how the world works.
Right. Yeah. There's no talk of how could our precinct have let this happen under our. They're all bad. It goes. It builds because you first get David Morse. It starts as some hitmen, then it's David Morse and his people, and then the police chief comes up to the side, and then like the captain or the mayor or somebody even bigger is involved. Like it is a whole lot of stuff.
It's not even some diabolical conspiracy to take over the world. It's just
it's just shitty cop work that's been covered up. It's,
overextending. It's excessive policing, and even the big crime in which they end up going down for it was an accidental death of a civilian through harsh, basically harsh interrogation.
Yeah, harsh interrogation.
And even that, that it's not some ramparts type. Kill squad type conspiracy is also very realistic. And, I keep talking about realism and plausibility, that also makes it a far more engrossing and suspenseful picture because the stakes are low enough that, relatively speaking, anything can happen. This isn't a film where Bruce Willis has to stop some guy from wiping out everything electronic in the country.
Right.
Of course he's going to win. This is an Escape from LA movie, or this isn't a Snake Plissken movie.
Well, there's a funny part where I did find kind of hokey-ish, maybe, I don't know, where when the people are getting let off the bus, David Morse totally racially profiles the guy, like thinking it's most deaf. It's not. It's a guy holding a kid, and the guy totally knows you're like, oh, you're doing this, and then he gives up most deaf. He's like, oh yeah, I put a suit on him, and he went that way. I was like, man.
Well, people aren't always good.
But he didn't realize it was police corruption was the issue on the bus. But I thought it was kind of funny. I'm like, oh man, that guy got totally racially profiled and then gives up. Like he didn't get pissed about the cop.
Well, to be fair, they took them hostage like 20 minutes ago.
True. Fair enough. I did think that there's a line in the movie that perfectly tells the story right at the beginning. It's like, this is what we're gonna do, and it should have been on the poster. Guy goes, 118 minutes to get a little hemorrhoid 16 blocks. I was like, and I look at the time, that's the length of the movie. Wow, okay. It really does that. And it never, like a lot happens, but I never feel like I'm questioning the amount of time the movie takes.
It's not in real time, but it almost feels like it. It's
a race against the clock movie, but I never feel the clock. I feel more for the safety of our two leads than I do the clock.
Because the distance is short enough that if they can not get killed, theoretically, they should be able to get there pretty quickly.
Right. So yeah, they check the time once in a while, but I'm never like, hurry, guys, get it. I'm more like, escape this situation. Because I feel like if they can get him to the courthouse, it doesn't matter if he's late. Like they can explain, so cops were trying to kill us when we were trying to get here. But here he is. Sorry, we have blood on us. Cops were trying to kill us, so he couldn't talk. But
and again, I find the film's epilogue very moving. It is a very satisfying coronation of the two protagonists and the effect they each had on each other's lives.
Right.
And it's a very, it's very do right. It's very pro karma.
Right.
And that's cheesy, but this is a fictional film.
In all fairness, too, the alternate ending, which is more of a downer, has this same sort of. It has a similar take on this, but just Bruce Willis's character had died in the one, and Mos Def never found out until he made that cake. But it still works in that fashion. It's just a little bit more of a downbeat note than the upbeat one. But I like Willis getting to see the reaction. I prefer the one where he lived. I think it works better, and it shows you that Mos Def's Eddie Bunker really made the difference in this guy's life.
Yes.
That he did more than just that day. And, he might go out to Seattle and see him. He might not. It doesn't matter. But
Because if Jack dies in the courthouse, then Eddie hasn't made him as much of a difference than he would have, than he does if Jack lives and has a vaguely satisfying last few years of his life.
Right, exactly. Because Eddie's the one who gets him to kind of reconcile with his sister, to reconcile with himself, to do all this and see the good in which he gets to live, to see the good with which he did to, say, oh, I made the right decision here.
Yes.
He probably not a cop. He's not a cop anymore, but who knows what kind of difference he can make there.
So yeah, I mean, it's a damn good movie. Back when movies of this nature were far more common in wide theatrical release from major studios at a certain budget level. It's not egregiously expensive, but it's like what, $40 million?
55.
Back when that was 55, when that was normal for a major studio picture.
It's got Bruce Willis, so he probably cost a chunk.
Back when he was worth it.
Yeah, he was worth it. Spring movie. It did. I mean, it did solid. It would have been done a lot better had it not cost as much, but that's the case with a lot of movies too. But,
yeah.
I think it's just a case. I don't know why it wouldn't have been interesting to people to go see, but I've always really liked it. It needs a new Blu-ray release or something because the audio is still Dolby Digital compressed audio.
Oh my!
From the original. I worked on this Blu-ray when it came out, and HD DVD too. I believe it was that early. It got both.
Yeah, that was right at sort of as the DVD wave was starting to go a little bit down. Which, to be fair, that was one reason why studios were willing to spend, $45 million in a Queen Latifah romantic comedy, last holiday.
Right.
Because even if it didn't go crazy in theaters, there was the potential of a vibrant post-theatrical afterlife.
Yep.
But now there's not.
Yeah. Now there's a subscription.
Now everything's content.
I'm content with content. But yeah, so 16 Blocks, really seek it out. It's a high recommend. It's a solid, easy movie to get through. Definitely, and you'll remember why Bruce Willis was a thing and considered so good. What else? This is where we just talk about something that we may have taken in recently. Seen, watched, read, done. Maybe you had a great meal at Burger King recently. I don't know, but this is where we share that. So, Scott, what else?
What have I watched recently? I did watch this movie, 16 Blocks, today.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard of it?
I have an hour.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I'm back. Wendy and I have been watching Dr. Death, an 8-part miniseries on Peacock.
Oh, okay.
Based on a true story about just a stunningly incompetent and or malicious doctor who just left a trail of botched surgeries and periodic corpses on his table.
Oh.
Joshua Jackson stars.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Along with Alec Baldwin, Christian Slater, Anna Sophia Robb. It's good in that, we watched it. It's fine. We enjoyed it. But it's also the personification of the new trend in which this 8-hour miniseries could have been a movie.
It's a lot of shows, too.
Yeah. I'm not the first person to, I'm not remotely the first person to say that, the adult skewing mid-level drama that used to be a movie is now, the streaming miniseries, The Unknowing or, Mayor of Easttown or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine, but...
Mayor of Easttown at least knew how to be an episodic. It knew the importance of structuring an episode and not just being like, okay, how do we make our movie? It's...
Yeah.
Yeah, they have 3 acts, but they're over the course of a...
Yeah, and it's frustrating because A, lot of this stuff is padded out unnecessarily. Mm-hmm. And B, in a world where general consumers don't necessarily have time to sit around and binge all day, you're asking them to commit what used to be, 140 minutes or less on a theatrical, what a movie would have been on this like 8-hour piece of miniseries.
Yeah.
And even if they choose that one, it's going to take them a week to get through it. And there's something else that they might have enjoyed in movie form that they're never going to get around to because the new thing just dropped.
Yeah. It's all about the next thing and not about just marinating in a good old film or a good old series to talk about. We have too much. And luckily, I'll say that I complain that there's too much a lot, but there's probably something for everybody now at any time. So there's that.
Yeah.
But remember, we used to all give things a shot together. That was, I don't know.
I am enjoying Only Murders in the Building.
I haven't started that yet. I want to.
It's cute. Everyone's in good form. Martin Short's terrific. The first 3 episodes are available. So I think newbies drop on Tuesdays. There might be a 4th episode.
Okay.
We're watching the 2nd season of Evil on Paramount Plus, which was a show that was terrific on CBS. It was so successful on CBS that they said, we want this to be an A+ on a streaming service that nobody watches. But it's fun. It's. Have you seen Evil?
I have not seen Evil.
Fair enough.
I am Evil.
Fair enough. No, basically, it's sort of a modern day kind of sort of X-Files type show about a priest and a civilian debunker and a tech guy that investigate allegations of spiritual miracles, bad miracles through the church, and shenanigans occur. And again, it's a not what it's about, but how it's about it type show.
Okay.
What's his name? Crap. He played Ben on Lost.
Yep.
Saw.
Ben Linus played
Michael Emerson. And when I say he spoiled Saw, I mean the first time I saw Saw, it's like, I know that guy from The Practice. He's a serial killer in The Practice. He's the killer. And I was right, sort of.
He's the guy who acted all weird, yet was not wanting to do what he did.
Yeah, it's like he's an unwilling participant, but he really gets off on torturing the wife and kid.
Oh. I'll go. My what else? As always, my listeners, I'm not sponsored by HBO Max. I just happen to enjoy their content. But White Lotus recently wrapped that one
I've heard good things.
It's a little quirky mini series, but things like work as their own each episode. Its opening leads you to believe there's going to be a lot like more sinister stuff going on, but it's just like darkly comedic, kind of brutal drama stuff at times, with some good A+ players. I'll usually watch what Alexandra Daddario does, but it's also got Connie Britton, Steve Zahn. I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff many years. Is it there? John Grease shows up midway through. Molly Shannon, some nice people in there. But it was a fun little quirky show. I don't know if I'd highly recommend it, but it was a solid watch. But that was what I most recently have taken in when I've had some time, and I'm working on a review of the Star Trek, the original 4-movie collection 4K Ultra HD set, which is my code for y'all didn't finish the restorations in time for the 55th anniversary, did you? Did you?
Give me Final Frontier. Give me Death.
They doubled down and were like, well, no, we're doing some more sets. We're going to do a Final Frontier, Undiscovered Country, and Generations. That's going to be the next set. And then the other one after that's going to be First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis, the one everybody wants. And I'm like, you guys are doubling down. There's no way you were like, yeah, the first 4 movie. Like, I get it when you did 2, 3, and 4. That's its own little, okay. But you threw motion picture in there, which tells me you started on something and we're like, oh, crap, we don't have the time. Just saying. Just be upfront about it. Just be like, look, we wanted to give you something.
That's fair.
But they look good. I've been through Motion Picture and Wrath of Khan, and they both look splendid. They also promise with this, they go, oh, that the Star Trek Motion Picture Director's Cut you guys all want? Yeah, we're doing it. Ooh, next year.
That was my next question, actually.
On Paramount Plus for a limited window, and then we're going to put out the 4K. I'm like, so you guys didn't finish that either? Like, what were you doing during the pandemic? You weren't making new
Star Trek 4.
God. I was like, what? What are you... What was, like... Oh, my gosh. Yeah, like, oh. So... they look good so far. There's like the new bonus features there's like a isolated score track on a couple of them. There's not really a whole lot new, but right now after the DVD and Blu-ray era, especially of popular things, everybody said what they have to say. Do we need new bonus features? Like Shatner said it, whatever he needs to say. Nicholas Myers said it. Like I know these people are like, oh, no new bonus features. I'm like, didn't the last ones cover it? Like,
how many times can you do the same thing in the Nightmare Encyclopedia?
Right. My thing is like, so Back to the Future, all they owe me bonus feature wise is just give me the Eric Stoltz footage. Just cut it together. Show me it. I want it like they showed a clip of it in a documentary with no sound. I'm like, that's what I want to see.
That was the Netflix thing?
That was on one of the box sets.
Oh.
Did a new documentary, and they had like, well, we tried Eric out, and they showed like real quick. This last time they gave us audition footage of like John Cryer, Ben Stiller, Keira Sedgwick, Billy Zane auditioning for roles. So that was cool. But I still want the Stoltz footage. And like the Alien box sets. They've done everything. All I want is James Remar as Hicks footage. Not just a picture. I want the footage. That's all you owe me. You don't have to get people for interviews. I've heard it. Everybody's afraid of James Cameron. I know. So
I still remember, and God, it's like 20 years ago when the first big Alien DVD box set came out. But like, if you watch all the behind the scenes stuff, like this weird pattern that everybody involved hates aliens because they said it like sort of the bastard stepchild, and they talk about it as if it's not everybody's favorite. It's very odd. I'm guessing just because it was more of the James Cameron show and everyone else felt left out.
Oh yeah. Well, he was working with like British crew people who they have a lot of different rules out there.
Yeah.
You don't mess with tea time. You don't mess with like in those studios out there. Cutoff time's cutoff time. They shut the power off.
Good for them.
There's tons of stories of Doctor Who episodes ending perfectly, like, and then the lights shut off, and they're like, we got it. But like, there's a fight. So Escape from New York, Shout Factory did a Blu-ray a couple years ago for it, and they got some of these set designer people to interview for new interviews, and James Cameron was the matte painter on that movie. And they were like, you could tell even then they had the fear of God. They're like, he was knew what he wanted, and he was really particular. His brush strokes were like, they're like scared that he was going to come after them if they said something. Like, you could tell they didn't have a good experience with him, but were afraid to say he was hard to work with or something as a matte painter on Escape from New York. So, but yeah, that's some stuff. But that'll wrap us up for this week, Scott. Always glad to have you back here.
Always glad to be here.
Awesome. It worked out that you could bookend it for year one. Will there be a year two? Yeah, there will. So, but as the curtain closes here, let people know where they can keep up with you.
Forbes.com. Please Google some form of the ticket booth, Forbes, Scott Mendelson. If you feel like subscribing for more than $4 a month, that'd be awesome. But I understand if you don't want to. My Twitter feed is @Scott Mendelson. That's where you can see all my unfiltered schmucky takes, as well as humor, speculation, charming bits of wisdom. Facebook is where all my family photos go. Don't go there unless you actually want to see the family photos.
All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD, written work at WhySoBlue.com. There's more from the Brandon Peters Show this week. But until then, thank you so much for tuning in this past year, subscribing, do whatever you do, sharing, commenting, arguing, telling me people suck. I don't care. It's been an honor to entertain and to frustrate you.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.